The old Chevy rumbled down the dark highway, headlights cutting through the thick darkness. John hummed along to the radio, trying to ignore the feeling of unease that crept up his spine. He had been driving for hours, the miles stretching out before him like an endless black ribbon. The woods pressed close to the road, their dark silhouettes seeming to reach out like grasping claws. John shivered, turning up the heater in the car. It was a cold night, the kind that settled deep in your bones and made you want to be anywhere but alone on a deserted highway. He glanced at the clock on the dashboard. Almost midnight. John sighed, his eyelids growing heavy. He had been on the road since early evening, driving back from a business trip. He just wanted to be home, curled up in bed, far away from this lonely stretch of road. As he rounded a bend, John's headlights caught a flash of white at the edge of the trees. He slowed down, squinting through the windshield. There, at the side of the road, stood a woman. Her long white dress flowed in the breeze and her dark hair cascaded down her back. She was waving her arms, her face pale in the darkness. John hesitated. It was late, and this stretch of road was known for being deserted. What was a woman doing out here all alone at this hour? He slowed the car to a stop a few feet away from her, rolling down the window just a crack. "Excuse me?" he called out, his voice hesitant. "Are you all right? Do you need help?" The woman didn't answer. She just kept staring at him, her eyes wide and dark. John felt a prickle of unease run down his spine. There was something about her, something about the way she stood so still that sent a shiver down his spine. She took a step closer to the car, and John could see her face more clearly in the dim light. She was young, maybe in her early 20s, with delicate features and a look of desperation etched on her face. She was beautiful, but there was something about her that made John's heart pound in his chest. She lifted a pale hand and pointed down the road, her lips moving but no sound coming out. John leaned closer, trying to hear what she was saying. "What is it?" he asked. "What are you trying to tell me?" Her eyes held his, pleading. Desperate, she pointed again, more urgently this time, her mouth forming silent words. John thought he could almost hear her voice, a faint whisper carried on the wind. "Please," it seemed to say, "help me." John felt a surge of sympathy for the woman. She was clearly in distress, and he couldn't just leave her stranded out here alone. He made a decision. He would help her. He unlocked the car door. "Get in," he said. "I'll take you to the nearest town." The woman nodded gratefully and moved towards the passenger door. John reached over to unlock it, his eyes never leaving her. He didn't see the way she glanced towards the back seat, a strange, almost triumphant smile playing on her lips. As the woman reached for the door handle, John felt a sudden, inexplicable chill. It was like a bucket of ice water had been poured over him. He turned his head just for a second, his eyes drawn to the rearview mirror. The back seat was empty, or was it? John blinked, his heart pounding in his chest. He could have sworn he saw something in the back seat, a flicker of movement, a shadow that wasn't there a moment ago. He turned his head quickly, but the back seat was empty. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice shaky. The woman didn't answer. She was gone. John jumped out of the car, his eyes scanning the side of the road. "Hello?" he called out. "Where did you go?" But there was no answer. The woman in white had vanished. John stood there for a moment, his mind racing. Had he imagined the whole thing? Was he more tired than he realized? He glanced back at the car, his heart still pounding. He half expected to see the woman sitting in the passenger seat, a smug look on her face, but the car was empty. John shook his head, trying to clear the image of the woman's face from his mind. He had to get out of here. This whole encounter had been strange, unsettling. He climbed back into his car, his hands trembling slightly as he gripped the steering wheel. He started the engine and pulled away from the spot where he had seen the woman. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the empty road ahead. John drove slowly, his eyes scanning the side of the road, half expecting the woman to reappear. But the road remained deserted. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the rustle of the wind through the trees. John drives away, his heart still pounding in his chest. He can't shake the feeling that he's not alone, that something is watching him from the shadows. John tried to rationalize what he had seen. Maybe it had been a trick of the light, or a figment of his tired imagination, but deep down, he couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. He had seen the woman, he was sure of it, and the look in her eyes, the desperation, the fear, it had felt all too real. Section 6. A chilling discovery. The next morning, a passing truck driver spotted John's car abandoned on the side of the road, the driver's side door wide open. The police were called and a search party was organized. John was nowhere to be found. His wallet, phone, and all his belongings were still in the car. The only thing out of place was a single white high-heeled shoe lying on the floor of the back seat. The police were baffled. There was no sign of a struggle, and no indication of where John might have gone. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air. News of John's disappearance spread quickly through the small town. Locals whispered about the legend of the Lonely Road, a stretch of highway known for strange occurrences and unexplained events. Some said the road was haunted, that the ghosts of those who had died there still roamed the woods, searching for lost souls to claim. Section 7. Whispers of the Past. The story of the Lonely Road was an old one passed down through generations. Some dismissed it as mere superstition, but others, those who knew the road's dark history, spoke of it in hushed tones. They told tales of travelers who had vanished without a trace, their cars found abandoned, their fates unknown. One story in particular sent chills down the spines of even the most skeptical listeners. It was the story of a young woman, dressed in a white gown, who had been killed on the road many years ago. According to legend, the woman had been on her way to her wedding when her car crashed, plunging into the deep ravine that ran alongside the road. Her body was never found. Now some say her ghost still wanders the road, searching for her lost love and seeking revenge on those who dare to travel alone at night. Section 8. The Legend of the Lonely Road. The legend of the woman in white had become intertwined with the history of the Lonely Road, a cautionary tale whispered to children and recounted around campfires. Over the years, there had been numerous reports of strange sightings on the road, fleeting glimpses of a woman in white, the sound of phantom footsteps, and unexplained accidents that left drivers shaken and confused. Some dismissed these stories as the products of overactive imaginations or the effects of fatigue, but others, those who had experienced the unexplainable firsthand, knew that the legend of the Lonely Road was more than just a story. They knew that the road held secrets dark and ancient, and that some things are best left undisturbed. Section 9. The Dress Remains. Weeks turned into months, and the search for John was eventually called off. The case remained unsolved. Another mystery added to the long list of unexplained disappearances associated with the Lonely Road. But the story didn't end there. A few days after John's car was found, a local farmer made a chilling discovery. He was walking along the edge of the woods, not far from where John's car had been abandoned, when he came across something hanging from a tree branch. It was a dress, a long white dress, torn and muddied, but unmistakably the same dress that the woman in the road had been wearing. The dress was wet, as if it had been recently washed, but there was no sign of the woman who had been wearing it. She, like John, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only the faintest whisper of her presence and a chilling reminder that some mysteries are never meant to be solved.